So now let me just kickstart the today's session. And in today's session, like we are going to create the reusable file. So like what is mean by reusable? So when something is common for each and every scenario, so we call it as an reusable. So let's say whenever like we are going to run or whenever we are going to design any of these scenarios, so the common step will be the browser invocation. So for sure, like without browser invocation, so we can't execute any scenario. So the browser invocation is like common for each and every scenarios, so which we call it as an reusable. So what we can do, so we can create a reusable file and under which like we can map the code of the browser invocation. So whenever like you are going to create a reusable file, so the reusable file should be created under the main Java. So we are having another folder called as in main Java and main resources. So as I told in the early, so as it is of an Maven, so we are going to utilize like each and every folder for specific purpose. So we will be using this source main Java for creating the reusable file. So what I'm doing, so here I'm adding the package called as an reusable. As per naming conversion, so the package name should be in the lowercase. So I'm just giving it as an reusable. And under which like I'm going to create the class called as an, like let it be the base code. So because like we are going to run this base code first, because like we are going to map the browser invocation coding inside this base code class. So I'm just creating the base code class and under which like I'm creating the method. So how we can create the method? So we can say public and then we will be using the keyword called as an void and followed by we should give some meaningful name for each and every method. So as we are doing the browser invocation, so we can say it is of an launch browser. Okay, I'm creating the method called as an launch browser. So and how we are going to launch the browser? With the help of the WebDriver. I can say like WebDriver. I'm just giving the variable name as a driver and is equal to, so new of like whatever the browser we need, we can select it up. So either we can run in the Chrome driver or Edge driver. So with the help of the framework, so we may execute the respective scenario in any of the web browser. So either we may run in the Chrome, Edge or Firefox or Safari, etc. So those configurations, so we are going to do in the base class. So like we are going to get the input from the user, like in which browser we need to execute. And how we are going to get the input from the user in the sense, we are going to create some file called as an config file. Okay, or we can say it is an configuration file. So in each and every framework, so we will be having some configuration file. So in the configuration file, so we will specify the browser which we need. So either we can specify like either you are going to run in the like Chrome or Edge or Firefox, etc. And we can specify the testy environment. So testy environment in the sense, so the URL which we are going to use for the testing is called as an test environment. So if you are using this amazon.in, then we can call it as an test environment. So in a real time, so we may have multiple test environment and we are going to configure all the URL in the config file. And how we are going to create the config file in the sense, so the extension of the config file should be always ends with the keyword called as an properties, the extension called as in properties. So like how the extension of the feature file ends with dot feature, in similar way, so the config file extension should ends with the dot properties. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a config file, and this config file is going to act as a supportive file for this base code. So as it is of an supportive file, so we should create under the resources, main resources. So if it is going to act as a supportive file for the test Java, then we should create in the resources. If it is going to act as the supportive file for main Java, then we should store under the main resources. So as the feature file is acting as a supportive file for the test step definition file, so we have created under this resources. So now the supportive file which we are going to use is going to help the reusable file. So which means like we need to create under the resource folder. Okay, the resource folder always contains the supportive files. So just I'm adding the like new directory. So let's say, so the directory may be of an configuration. So I'm just creating a package called as a configuration, and under which I'm going to add the file. So I'm just right clicking and navigating the new. I'm just going to selecting the file, and I'm just specifying the file name as config, and the extension should be n with the dot properties. Okay, I'm just creating with the dot properties.
So Aravind, can you repeat once why we have created in under the main folder and not under the test?
Because this config file is going to act as the supportive file for the this reusable package. So whereas this feature file is going to act as the supportive file for the step definition. So we should like map the relevant thing, or else like what I can say. So we are having the different folders like, so one is like main Java. So this main Java will always contain the reusable file, and whatever the supportive file which is going to be used by this reusable file should create under the main resources. Okay, so we are going to have the config file over it. Okay, so this will contain the reusable class file, and whatever the supportive file which is required for this reusable class file should be placed under the main resources. Another thing, like we are having the test Java, so where we are having the automation code, and whatever the supportive file which is required for the test Java should be placed under the test resources. Okay, so now I am just creating under the main resources. I have added the package, and I need to add the file. I'm just going to the navigating the new, and I'm just clicking on the file and giving the file name as an config, and we should provide the correct extension. So properties. Okay, so initially like when I create, I made some typo, so the property file is not created correctly. So now I have created in the correct extension, and I have clicked on enter. So you could be able to see this setting logo, so which means the property file is created. So and how we are going to amend the properties, in the sense we are going to establish the key to value pair relation. So what is mean by key to value pair? So let's say if I say name is equal to Aravind, so we call name as a key and Aravind as a value. So like whenever I call this key name, obviously the Aravind will be called. So in similar way, like I'm going to create the key called as a browser, and I'm going to map the value. So you can specify either it is of an like Chrome or Edge, etc. And in another case, I'm going to create the another key called as an test environment, and I'm going to map the appropriate URL. So it is kind of an key to value pair. So like for easy understanding, like I'm using the hash symbol. I'm just you make it as key and value. So what this hash indicates, in the sense, it indicates the comment line. So like in the class file, So how we use the double slash. So whenever we use the double slash, so the particular line will be like skipped during the execution, which is nothing but it will act as the comment line. In similar way, like if you need to comment anything in feature file or any other file, so we should use hash. So for example, if I use the keyword called as a hash before unstatement, it will act as a command line, and while execution it will execute the given, when and then statement, because like we have like added the command line. So the hash indicates it's a command line. So here, for easy understanding, with the help of the command line, I am making the notes as a key and value. So we are going to create the key to value pair relationship. The first key I'm going to provide is called as a browser, and I'm going to assign some value. So either the before execution, the user can like inject the required configuration. So if you need to run in a edge, we can give it as an edge. Like and then like we are going to provide the respective URL, so which we call it as an environment. So like as of now, like we are executing our test case in the Salesforce, right? So I can provide that URL over here. Okay, so I have provided the respective environment over here. So now we need to read the data from the config.property file, and whatever the data the user has provided, so based on which the execution should happen. So if I say it is of an Chrome, so it should execute in the Chrome. If it is of an Edge, it should execute in the Edge. And how we are going to read this properties files in the sense, so like in a Java, like we are having the class called as an properties. Okay, so there is a class called as an properties class. So only with the help of the properties class, we can read the properties file. Okay, so there is a class in Java called as an properties. So only with the help of the properties class, we can we can read the properties file. So like one thing is like, if you need to use one class in other class, I told the properties is a class, and we are going to use this properties class in other class. So whenever we are going to use one class in other class, so we should create an object. Okay, so whenever you are going to use one class in the other class, so we should always create the object for the respective class. As we are going to use this properties class, I'm going to create the object for the properties class. So I'm just giving the class name, followed by I'm just giving the variable name as a prop is equal to how we will be creating the object, in the sense with the help of the new keyword I can say, so new of properties. So why we are creating the object, in the sense whenever we need to use one class in the other class, we should create an object. So now I'm just navigating to my base code. Okay, so here I'm going to read the configuration file. So which is nothing but we're going to read the properties file, and how we are going to read the property file, in the sense with the help of the properties class. So I'm just using the properties class. So from the suggestion, you can either select it up, so post selecting, or you can just type it fully. And I'm just giving the variable name as a prop. So purely the variable name is user choice, and I'm just giving new of properties. Okay, so now we have created the class for this properties class, and this properties class is provided by the Java. So like even like if you can always look on the import statement, the properties class is imported from the Java. So the WebDriver or the Chrome driver is imported from the Selenium. And like in similar way, like if you just open the runner file, you could see like the Cucumber options is enabled from the JUnit, and run with is also in a extracted from the JUnit. So likewise from the import statement, so we will get to know so which jar file, so the respective class files or the interface is using up. So now we are going to read this property file. And before reading the data, so we need to load the property file. And in order to load, so we will be having some method called as an load method. I already told. So if it is of a class, the class will contains method. Okay, always the class will contain method. So like inside this properties class, we are having the method called as an load method. So I'm going to use the load method. With the help of the load method, so we are going to pass the path of the config file. So what is the variable name? So the variable name is prop. I can say prop dot. So there is a method called as an load. So but if you see, the load method is a parameterized method, and it is asking us to pass something called as an reader. And from the naming conversion, like we can understand, so the reader is a class file. So which means like we are going to read the data. So generally we will performing two operation. So either we may read the data or we may write the data. So in order to read the data in a Java, like we are having the class called as an file input stream. Okay, so whenever we use this file input stream class, it will read the data. So whenever we use the class called as an file output stream, so it is used as to write the data. So here we are going to read the data. So which means like we are going to use the class file input stream as a reader. So I'm just selecting the method called as an load, and with the help of the reader class, either we should pass the reader or we can pass the input stream. So we are going to pass the input stream, so which is nothing but with the help of the file input stream, like we are going to provide the path of the config file. So again, this file input stream is a class. So if we need to use one class in another class, so for sure we need to create an object. So I'm just creating the object for that file input stream, and I'm just giving the variable name as FIS is equal to new of file input stream. Okay, so I'm just giving the new of file input stream, and post that, like we are getting the error in the file input stream. So like even this file input stream is a parameterized. So either we need to pass the string or we need to pass the file name, or we are going to pass the file descriptor. So either you can directly pass the string name, so or else like here we are going to pass the file, right? Because like the config dot property is a kind of an file, so we need to pass the file. But if we need to pass the file, they have given some class called as an file class. So only with the help of the file class, so you need to pass the path of the file. So in order to use the one class and another class, so we need to create an object. So I'm straight away creating the object inside it. So I'm just giving new of file, and with the help of the file class, we are going to provide the path of it. So whenever it throws an error, hover the mouse over it and then just click on the import class. Okay, here we need to provide the path name. So whenever you are going to provide any path name, so we should provide from the source folder, which we call it as a content root. So from the source folder, I'm just deriving. So source forward slash, and then we are navigating to the main. So forward slash, and then like we are going to navigate to the folder called as an resources. I'm just giving it as an resources, followed by we are navigating to the file package called as an configuration, and under which like we are going to read the file called as an config.properties. Okay, so config.properties. So we need to provide the path of the file only with the help of the file class. So either you can straight away create the object here, or else like what you can do, you can just say file, you can give some variable name as f is equal to new of file, and then you can just provide the file path, and you can pass it over this file input stream class. So either you can do it accordingly. So here, in order to just reduce the line of code, so I'm just creating the object straight away inside the file input stream, because like the file input stream will accept the file class as an input, and with the help of the file class, so we are providing the path of the property file. As file is a class, in order to use one class in other class, we need to create an object. And how we are going to create the object in the sense, with the help of the new keyword. And post adding this file path, so we are getting an error in this file input stream. So like just hover over this method, and it will show us a suggestion called as an add exception to the method signature. And what is the exception it is going to add in the sense? It will throw the error called as an file not found exception. So which means, so while executing, so we have provided the path. So if the path is wrong, then it will throw the exception called as an file not found exception. So in order to throw that exception, so we should hover over it, and we should click on this suggestion called as an add exception to the method signature. So when I click on it, so the appropriate exception will be added over here, which means whenever the file path is wrong, it will throw the exception called as an file not found exception. So now we are going to provide the file path inside this load method. So what is the variable name? We call it as an FIS, and inside the load method, I'm just passing it as an FIS. So now this load method is throwing an error. So if I hover over it, like it will ask us to add one more exception. So whenever some exception is suggested, so we should add that exception to the method. So I'm just clicking on add exception to the method. The respective method will be get added up. So now we have loaded the configuration file. So we can able to load the config file, and inside the config file, we are having some many keys as well as value. So now we need to provide the appropriate key so that the corresponding value will be returned. So now how I'm going to read the value in the sense, there is another inbuilt method called as an get property, which is available inside this properties class. So I'm just giving the variable name as an prop dot. We are having another method called as an get property, and inside which we need to pass the key. So whenever we provide the key, it will return the value. So if I say load dot get property, if I tell the key as environment, so it will just return the environment called as an HTTPS login.salesforce. For example, like if you're going to like use the get method, right? So we can say driver.get, and inside the get method, we are going to pass the URL. So instead of hard coding the URL, so hard code in the sense I already told, like whenever we mention something in the double quotes, we call it as an hard coded value. In an automation, so we should always avoid the hard coded value. So how we can avoid in the sense, so like we can just read the URL with the help of the property file. I'm just passing over it. So now what happened? So like whenever I say driver.get, so it will read the property file, and under which it will search the key called as an environment, and post that like as the environment is mapped, so it will retrieve the corresponding URL. So how the variable holds the value, so here the key hold the value, and the corresponding value will be passed inside the get method. And even like in a future, like if you need to run in a different URL, you can change the URL in the config file rather than updating in the code. So now you could see, as we have used the key called as an environment in the configuration.properties, so the respective key has been mapped. It is differentiating, it is highlighting in the a different color. Okay.